What do wet dreams mean spiritually? Wet dreams are very vivid and often involve some sexual activity. You get so into it that you realize you are ejaculating both in your dreams and reality. People don't usually consider the spiritual meaning of wet dreams. It requires a certain level of maturity to think about the spiritual dimension of this type of dream. Why do people have wet dreams? A wet dream is a natural occurrence for boys, men, and a minority of women. This dream happens involuntarily during sleep. You cannot intentionally give yourself a wet dream. What causes wet dreams? The causes of wet dreams are unknown. But they are closely associated with the conscious and subconscious desires of sexual intercourse or erotic dream imagery that a person has. If you desire sex, it would not be unusual for your dreams to reflect this desire. The more you suppress it, the more your subconscious will project it in the form of a dream. What is the spiritual significance of wet dreams? When it comes to religion and most spiritual paths, wet dreams are often associated with impurity and evil. For many religious traditions, especially in the West, sex is taboo. For them, sex signifies a loss of control. In other religions, wanton sex is like being possessed by evil spirits. Sex outside marriage is still considered immoral in most religions. It is not surprising that wet dreams are also viewed as shameful and sinful. What is the Christian view of wet dreams? The Christian view of wet dreams focuses on the concept of adultery. Jesus Christ said, if you think about desiring a woman who is not your wife, you are committing adultery. Christians also believe that a wet dream is a form of temptation by the devil. In the Christian tradition, constantly praying to the Holy Spirit will help you forget your carnal desires. How do the Muslims look at wet dreams? Most Muslims are believers in Islam and the Abrahamic faith. They also view wet dreams as impure, but unlike Christians, they do not think of it as a sin. The Muslims also consider the age of the person. A young boy who has not reached puberty will not be accountable for his actions. In Muslim tradition, the focus on dealing with wet dreams has more to do with the cleansing of the person. Different rituals are expected to happen during Ramadan and Sahar. What is the Buddhist outlook on wet dreams? The Buddhists view wet dreams in the context of masturbation. The core of Buddhist belief is attachment to worldly pleasures. The Great Buddhist Project is to break the endless cycle of birth, life, death, and rebirth. They developed a series of practices that enable people to use their minds to deal with attachments. In the sexual context, a monk who sleeps with a clear mind will be free from spiritual attacks and sexual thoughts. He will not dream about sexual activities or sexual desires. Buddhists focus on clearing the mind, which leads to free the soul. How do wet dreams affect women? Dreaming about sex or involuntary ejaculation in women is a rare thing. Women might have the same sexual desires as men, but the manifestations are different. If a woman has an intense sexual desire for somebody, it often involves different dream imageries. The dreams would take different forms instead of an actual sex dream. Women also tend to have wet dreams because of the food they eat. Foods with gluten can inflame or swell you up. Other foods raise your blood pressure, which can affect your nighttime visions. How do wet dreams affect men? Various schools of thought in psychology view this type of dream as an addiction, especially if it happens many times during sleeping. Frequent thoughts about masturbating by single men are ways of attaining pleasure and releasing sexual pressure. The problem is if the frequency hinders him from fulfilling his other daily activities. Why are men more susceptible to wet dreams? Wet dreams happen more often to men because they get turned on based on what they see. It makes a lot of sense because men are hunters in biological history. Hunters pay close attention to their surroundings, or they will not survive. In the context of visual arousal, it is not unusual for men to masturbate once they are exposed to intense visual stimuli like porn. Men are less likely to control their sexual urges than women. They cannot redirect their desires as women do. They need to release the sexual tension to have a clear and productive mindset. What does porn do to your brain? When you masturbate from watching porn, your brain releases dopamine. It is one of the most addictive substances that can flood your bloodstream. Pretty soon, you will get addicted to watching porn because your brain has become addicted to the pleasure. Watching porn could also screw up your relationship. Your unrealistic expectations from your partner will lead to separation. Your partners will never perform at the level of professional porn actors. But subconsciously, some men expect their partners will give them the intense pleasure they get from it. Porn is connected to your dopamine addiction and it becomes a hard habit to break. It will most likely destroy your sexual pleasure and poisons your relationships. How will you resist sexual desires? According to Buddhist tradition, meditation, practicing compassion, and emptying yourself by giving to others enables you to let go of many earthly desires. Whatever the case may be, the answer depends on you. You will decide how to create balance in your body and mind.